Welcome to my channel. I'm Dani Marie AUC, and today I'm gonna share with you my career path. It's been a wild ride with lots of ups and downs. And before we get started, I want to say that this is my career path. That in no way means that this is going to be your career path or your child's career path. So keep fighting, keep moving forward, and keep your head up. Let's jump in. If you guys have been enjoying my content and you would like to support my channel, you can do so by liking, subscribing, and sharing my videos. It's as easy as that. And I have my red turtle shell here for comfort because this is a tough topic, and this plush turtle shell is very soft. So if you see it peeking up into the frame, that's what it is. High school was a challenge for me in that I was just at the beginning of realizing the impact that my vision was going to have on the rest of my life. I didn't know anybody who had albinism. I didn't have a mentor or even someone to look up to. I had a few internet friends. Really they were more like acquaintances at the time. Nothing like what I have now. So I was really alone in my struggle at the time. I didn't know who I could talk to, and I didn't know who would ever understand because I barely understood what was going on with me myself. I knew I couldn't drive, so I just always assumed that I would move away to a big city. I always had big city dreams. Always. In high school, I remember we had to write this career goal, like sort of a paper on what we thought our future career might be. And for me, I picked business. Kind of general, but I wrote this, what I thought was a beautiful metaphor about how business functions much like a smooth, well-oiled machine, in that all of these small pieces that go into it make up the whole, and they all work smoothly together to keep this business running. So I didn't know a ton about business. I didn't know about all the minuscule day-to-day things that went on in a business, but I know I appreciated the fact that you could be one tiny part of a business and still be important to that business. And I considered myself pretty poetic as a high school student. I then took business classes in high school. I loved computers, business ethics, accounting, and so much more. I competed in competitions. I even did pretty well. I was never like number one, but I was pretty successful. And I loved it. I loved everything I was learning in those classes. They were my favorite. So then I went to community college because that's what everyone told me I should do. And I started in this, what I thought was a business computer technology program. It turned out to be a program for people who wanted to work as secretaries essentially later. Now, I don't have anything against people who enjoy that work, and people are very good at that work. That work is essential, but it's not what I wanted to see myself doing. I always thought I'd be more of a leader, and not just because I wanted to be in charge, but because I consider myself to be a very organized person. So I got out of that program and I got into economics, and I thought, economics, that's business related, a little bit of numbers, a little bit of this and that, could be pretty cool. So I continued at the community college to go on to get my AA degree, so I planned to get all the transfer credits that I would need. And then I started applying for schools in New York City because I had friends there, and I thought, you know what? There's so much opportunity there. Even if I'm a broke college student, there are still things for me to do there, even if it's just have a nice walk through the city or through Central Park or some other outlying part of New York. So I applied for NYU, I applied for Fordham, I applied for a SUNY college, and a few more, I think. And I put in all the effort and all the work. Do you guys know how expensive it is just to apply for college? More on that later. I applied, And I got into a few schools, including Fordham, which, for those who don't know, is a very prestigious private Jesuit university in the Bronx. And I was so excited. I thought, my dreams are coming true. I wanted for so long to move away to a city where I could get around and be independent, and I was on cloud nine. Or, I thought. I realized how expensive that school is going to be, and that I was going to need a student loan. So federal loans they weren't going to be enough, and I didn't have anyone to co-sign for a private loan. Even after reaching out to the dean of the university and securing as much financial aid as I could, that process was pretty interesting. But I did everything that I thought I could do. It still didn't work out. It was just going to be too much. It was going to be too much money. It was going to be too much everything. And it would have been a really similar story, probably going to almost any school in New York, just because cost of living, cost of the university, and everything together is just so much. So after a full year of really struggling with that loss, with depression, anxiety, the panic attack, I kept working towards my AA degree. I ended up in some psychology classes and some human development classes, and realized that I really loved that topic. And so I thought, well, why don't I just go get a degree in psychology? And so that's when I headed over to my state's, one of my state's big public universities, but it was a smaller branch in the town I live in. So I got over there and I started studying psychology, and I loved it. I loved everything about it. I loved the research. I loved the writing. I loved the statistics even. I loved it all. And I was told I need to further my education in order to get a job in, anything exciting, anything fun to do with psychology. And I was okay with that because I really loved school. I loved every single class I took, I enjoyed. I honestly could not tell you one single class that I hated. There were probably some in high school I hated, but that's a different story. But in college, even the history class I took, that was a ridiculous amount of work for basically fulfilling a degree requirement. I loved it. I love everything about learning. Everything. So I made plans to continue on and get my PhD. I wanted to get a PhD in clinical psychology because I wanted to work in a hospital. I wanted to work with patients. I wanted to do research. I wanted it all. I had participated in a neuropsychology study as well, just with the research portion of it. And I really loved that. So I thought, I could do something with this, because the brain and all of its weird, beautiful complexity is so fascinating. I finished my degree, my bachelor's degree in psychology with a 4.0 GPA. And then I went to do an internship with an addiction clinic. I enjoyed the addiction clinic and everything, learning about addiction, but I could tell that my vision was going to affect the way I do things, and I didn't know how to work around that in a way that made sense to me, and I was intimidated. I did the best I could though. I ran groups, I charted notes, I did office tasks, and I generally learned a lot from that internship. As I was doing this internship, I began applying for PhD programs for clinical psychology. I think the first year I applied for 4 maybe, but this is just like local cities, so places sort of nearby, maybe 5 to 10 hours away. In the US everything is so spread out. But I was in a relationship at the time, and I'm still in the same relationship, so I didn't want to go too far, but I knew I needed to be somewhere that would work better for me. And so I applied for 4 schools. I soon discovered the ridiculous, exorbitant, excessive cost of applying for grad school. So you have to take the grad school test, whatever your entrance exam is if you have one. For me, it was the GRE, which cost me like $160 to take. Then you have to pay to send your scores to each of your prospective schools. then you also have to pay to send your transcripts to each of those schools. And you also have to pay each of those schools application fees, which can be almost $80. I applied, like I said, for 4 that first year, and I think it was over $300 to apply for 4 schools. I didn't get any interviews the first time I applied, even with my 4.0 GPA, my small amount of research experience, and my internship. It was pretty disappointing. I had done a lot of research and found out most of these schools, they only accept students 1 time a year, that's in the fall, and they accept 6 to maybe 10 at the very most in some programs students each year. So it's very competitive. And apparently I was not competitive enough for these programs. So the second round I applied for some of the same schools and some new schools. And I got one interview for a pretty local school. I went to the interview, and the interview, it didn't go as planned. It was fine, but I sprained my ankle the night before I was going to do the interviews in a tunnel walking around. First time I ever sprained my ankle, and it had to be away from home. I'm like, come on. But also, I felt a lot like a small fish in a big pond, because so many of the students there were talking about the 20 schools that they applied for. 20. I did the math on that, and that's over $1,000 in application fees and testing fees and things. And I just could not understand where a 20-something got $1,000 just to apply for schools. I just couldn't. I still cannot wrap my mind around that, honestly. So, academics, man, academics is a lot, and there are a lot of barriers for people who are poor and for people who are disabled, and that could be an entire video on its own. So we're gonna move on. Once again, my plans shattered in a very huge way. I gave up on getting into a PhD program, and I was beginning to wonder if the problem was me. This is a very unhealthy way to think of things, but I struggled with it a lot. I struggled so much, and I was still young. I mean, I'm still young, what can I say? But yeah, it was a tough time. Next, I ended up going back to the same branch of school, and I got into the counselor education program, and I got my master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. Until I was almost done with the program, though, I had no idea how many barriers there would be toward me getting my license to actually practice as a counselor. Again, I finished this degree with a 4.0 GPA. Very good student, love school. And the classes were wonderful. I dealt with very little in the way of barriers and discrimination in the classes. I have my methods for reading and doing this or that, and teachers were very good with getting me anything I needed. I am very lucky that I do not need a lot of accommodations to get what I need to do done. And that's just my story. That's not yours. So I finished my degree, and it felt a bit like a miracle that I did, because my clinical training was a bit of an exercise in discrimination and ignorance. And I know I said I would talk about it, and I will eventually, but there's just so many feelings around what happened that it is so hard to talk about. Just people that I trusted, that I'd known for years. And yeah, it's gonna have to wait for another video. Plus this one's gonna be long as it is, so graduation day came around, and honestly it was a pretty sad day. It should have been a day of celebration. I tried so hard to be happy that day, but I couldn't. It felt a bit like another defeat, like I was just here and sure, I'd finished my degree, but I knew the barriers that were in front of me toward getting my license in the area that I live in. And it just felt like I'd wasted so much time and so much energy to what? To now be overqualified for any of the jobs that I would apply for in the future. Plus, I felt very alone, honestly. My partner, who's in the military, was actually on a deployment for most of that semester and for graduation. So I felt like I found a whole new way to fail in like this huge way. And I'll be honest, I struggled again. It was almost an entire year. I spent grieving. I spent wondering if I was the problem. I spent reliving all of the things that maybe I could have done differently so that people would have treated me differently or looked at me differently. And it was a rough time. It was very isolating. That was last year, 2019, before the events of this year. But it was hard. I wondered, was it discrimination? Was it because I was blind, or was it just me? Was I the reason all these things were happening to me? Was I the reason I had all these bad experiences? Like, what was I doing? What could I have done differently? All of those questions went around and around in my head over and over again on repeat. And I struggled a lot. At that point, I started babysitting at my house for a friend of mine. And it was just one baby. Eventually it became two. And one moved away. And now I still babysit and I keep one baby. But when I started that, I did start exploring other options. Like, what could I do? What kind of education could I get to provide for myself, to make a life for myself that was sustainable and practical in a city with no public transportation? What can I do from home, basically? And would I continue babysitting? Like, would that be my future career? So that brings us to the end of 2019, the beginning of 2020, where I had finally picked myself up. I was excited about a new year. I was excited about all the things I was planning to do. I had planned various trips finally, and I was even planning an independent trip where I would travel on my own to New York City to visit my friends. And well, we all know what happened in 2020. Many of our plans were canceled. That's how I ended up on YouTube. I had been contemplating a YouTube channel for a while, probably a couple years, since I really started working on albinism up close in 2019. And I never knew when or even how to commit to it. Like, how would I make it a thing? How would I stay committed? How would I make it work? But I had some time off in 2020, a few weeks here or there, and I decided it was now or never. So here we are. We are several months in, going strong, and I'm really thankful for all of you guys who have stuck with me, especially those from the very beginning who are like, yeah, you need to start a YouTube channel, you need to do it. Because that's really what's been keeping me going. That's what's motivated me. There's so much more to talk about with this topic. I could talk about the numerous jobs I applied to, was qualified for, and yet did not get the interviews I went on where it was obvious there was some discrimination. I'm not the only one who's dealing with this either. The second you bring up your visual impairment, just to say that you have many ways to work around it, because it's very obvious if they ever see me reading anything in an interview or they look at me and they know anything about albinism, it's obvious. It's not something I can avoid talking about. So the second you bring that up in an effort to assuage any concerns they have, the tone, the whole feeling of the room changes, and even someone who is blind can pick up on that. It's been a frustrating journey. I could talk about considering whether or not to just take my master's degree off of my resume when I apply for jobs. And is that lying? Is it dishonest? Because what if I just want a bachelor's level job? What if I just want a normal job, like a normal human being, and don't want to face the whole conversation about how I'm overqualified and why I'm overqualified? I can definitely cover more of these topics in detail if there's interest. I would love to do it for you guys. This video was a very hard one for me to make. I kind of wrote everything down a few weeks ago and I struggled to record it because I knew how hard it would be. And yeah, still happy to do it for you guys because I hope my experience can at least tell someone out there they're not alone. I love this type of video because it's so important, and I gotta say, I never once thought I would become an advocate. It never crossed my mind, even when I was working on albinism up close. I just wanted to put my stories out there and hope they would help someone in like this very passive way. I didn't want to be in front of a camera. I didn't want my face to be out there. I didn't want my likeness on the internet talking about my own issues and things. But here we are, and honestly I love it. I never imagined it would be something I would do, but I've enjoyed it so much. It's made making videos like this that are hard worth it. And it's made all the wonderful comments and the feedback you guys have given me. It just pushes me forward, and I hope you're out there and you may have gone through something similar and now you feel less alone, because that is my ultimate goal. I don't want people to feel as alone as I did as a kid. I felt so alone and so isolated and so misunderstood, and no one should have to go through that, especially not in today's age of technology. So here I am. Thank you guys again for being here, because it means a lot to me, and I want to build a community. A little bit for me, but a lot for you guys, because again, I don't want anyone to go through what I went through as a teenager. So, as always, stay curious, and until next time, bye!